Hi everyone, it's Sandy with Animal Education and Rescue. It is so good to be with you tonight. And I am going to wait a few minutes and see who comes on board. And we are talking all about dogs that bite. So this is a very interesting topic and I think a very important one. I have here with me, while we wait a minute, I have this little girl with me. This is Tori, and little Tori just went to the vet today, and the vet said she was an angel. You were an angel, sweetheart. Yeah. So Tori is wearing a pajamas because Tori has a problem with going potty everywhere, which is not good. No. So she's wearing a diaper. Yeah. So we'll talk about Tori another time. We've got lots to talk about in this hour I'm going to spend with you. And I've got dogs here and they're fighting over a bone. So trying to get them to hopefully cooperate with each other. Hey, maybe we'll have a dog bite happen. And then we can know firsthand what happens sometimes with dogs. So I see Ashley is here. Hi, Ashley. And I see that Wendy is here. Good to have you. Hi. And Wendy says, hi, Tori. Wendy says, hi. Yeah. Such a good girl. She needs her teeth cleaned. Yeah. We got to take her back to the vet and get her teeth done. So, but that'll be next, right, baby? All right, let's see who else comes on. I'm going to wait a few more minutes just because I'd like to get enough people on here that I don't have to repeat myself. And I said I was going to start at 7 o'clock. It's 7:01 according to my clocks. So let's see who else comes on. And I'll tell you, this is an important topic, and there are so many misconceptions about dog bites that I think if we can cover a little bit of it, I think it's going to be fantastic. I think it's really important that we talk about it. Don't you? Don't you, Tori? We need to talk about this kind of thing and get it out there and really educate the public about dog bites and some of the misconceptions and some of the things we can do to prevent dogs from biting. All very important things. And Ashley says, Tori is so cute. Yes, she is. She is your kind of dog, Ashley. I know you love these little cute little fluffy dogs. And she is a cute little fluffy dog. She also has an ear infection. So she has an ear infection and she has to get her teeth cleaned. She just went to the vet today. So that is going to be the next step, is to get her teeth cleaned. And then she'll be ready for adoption. I don't know if she'll be housebroken by then, but she will be available for adoption. So I see there are 5 people on. And we are going to post this on our YouTube channel as well as on our Facebook page so that people can go back to it if they would like to watch the whole thing. So I think what we'll do is get started. Just to set some rules here, I am going to ask periodically if anybody has any questions about anything that I have discussed thus far. I'm going to ask everybody not to ask questions that are outside the scope of what I am currently talking about. And I would be very grateful if we could do that so we can stay on task. For a change, I actually have notes. So I have notes so that I can get as much information for you as possible for this wonderful program. So let's begin. What dogs bite? Well, any dog can bite. And I want to just make that clear that if a dog has a mouth and a dog has teeth, it can bite. And so thinking that there's only certain kinds of dogs that bite or certain situations that cause a dog to bite is unrealistic. And if we go under the premise that we know that any dog can bite, then we can do what we need to do to prevent that from happening and to educate ourselves on what would cause a dog to bite. And so let's talk about what would cause a dog to bite. First of all, I'm going to just kind of go through a list of what would cause a dog to bite, and then I'm going to flush that out a little bit. So stress can cause a dog to bite, protectiveness, misdirected aggression, prey drive, prey aggression, pain, cognitive issues, chemical imbalance. Those are just some of the probably key things that would cause a dog to bite. But let's just flush this out a little bit. A dog could bite from stress. One of the things that I think we all want to teach our children, and we teach the general public, is do not approach a dog that's backed in a corner and is fearful and reach out to pet them, because a dog like that is clearly under stress, and we certainly do not want to pet that dog or reach out to pet that dog at that time. That is pretty common for a dog bite to happen when a dog feels cornered and they are already stressed out, and then we exasperate the issue by approaching them. Stress in a situation could cause a dog to bite. For example, we do adoption events all the time, and I am so careful and so picky about what dogs I allow to go to our adoption events, because there are so many stressors that dogs face when they go to adoption events. New people, new situation, new smells, potentially new dogs, sounds that are scary, people that are scary, and it gives them all sorts of opportunities to completely stress out and potentially bite. Let's move on to protectiveness. Dogs that are protective, and every dog is different on how protective they are. So you could have a dog that is very protective of their property. And so if somebody, let's say a meter reader, were to come into their yard and the dog was in the yard, the dog could bite the meter reader. But yet that same dog on neutral territory wouldn't bite. You could have a dog that's protective of its owner, and that dog could decide that it feels that its owner is being threatened by somebody standing next to the owner when, let's say, they're walking the dog down the block, and the dog could feel that it needs to protect the owner. There's all sorts of reasons that a dog would think it needs to protect its owner, its property, itself, that kind of thing. Also, misdirected aggression. That is a big one. A lot of people don't realize. I liken it to, imagine two people are getting in a fight, and I'm not talking about a physical fight. They're just having a verbal confrontation, and the anger is raising, and they're just really, really angry at each other. And then somebody comes up from behind, from one of the people that is angry, and taps that person on the shoulder, taps the person that's angry on the shoulder, and the person that's angry would go, "What do you want?" like that, and maybe smack back at the person behind them, because they're so pumped up and so angry that they're misdirecting their aggression. Dogs notoriously, sometimes, some of them, actually a lot of them, will misdirect aggression, and that's something we really have to be mindful of, and I'll go into that a little bit further as we move on with this. Also, prey drive. A dog that is, let's say, obsessed with squirrels, and a squirrel goes running in the yard and towards the tree, and the dog will just run after the squirrel and bite the squirrel, and that's a prey drive, and that would cause a dog to bite. And prey aggression, so let's say a dog that, or a dog where there's a cat in the house as well. Maybe it has some instinct of aggressiveness towards that cat, then it could potentially bite. Pain would cause a dog to bite. If, let's say, it gets injured or it gets its foot stuck in something and you try to remove its foot from whatever it's stuck on, it could bite then. Or if you step on its toe, or if it's at the vet and the vet does something that is painful to the dog could bite. And cognitive issues would be things like dementia in dogs that could potentially cause that. And that actually is not that uncommon. When a dog gets older, they get foggy-brained and they start getting confused, and maybe they see shadows that aren't there, or they don't recognize their owner as well, and all of that. So any of that cognitive issues could potentially cause a dog to bite, right? And lastly, I have chemical imbalance. And the chemical imbalance would be if a dog is biting randomly, unpredictably, and it's been determined that there's no cause for the biting other than the dog is just biting, then it could potentially be a chemical imbalance. So those are some of the things. Now, from here, I want to see if anybody has any questions. I see Lori is on. Hi, Lori. I see Kathy's on. And Wendy says, where's my girl? Oh, are you talking about Summer? She's here. She's on the floor, if that's who you're talking about. She is here, sleeping. Any questions, anybody, on anything I've already talked about? If not, we're going to flush this out even more. Okay. So I don't see any questions. So let's move further into this. Let's talk about dog bites, more specifically dog-to-dog bites. Dog bites a cat or a small animal in the house, like a rabbit or a guinea pig or something like that, and a dog bites a person. So we're going to break it down into those three categories. A dog bites a dog. Let's talk about that first. There's many reasons why a dog would bite another dog. First of all, it could be that that dog just doesn't like that particular dog. It's really interesting, but really in the world of dog, it's no different than the world of people in the effect that some dogs like certain other dogs and then don't like other dogs. And sometimes there's no rhyme or reason. They could like 99% of dogs, and there's this one dog down the block that drives your dog crazy. And anytime you go past the house, and if that dog is outside, your dog wants to bite that dog. And it could just be a personality thing. Your dog, for whatever reason, has decided does not like that particular dog. It could also be that your dog doesn't like a particular size dog. So let's say you have a large dog. Maybe your dog doesn't like any small dogs, but it's fine with big dogs. Let's say your dog doesn't like Rottweilers, and your dog is a golden retriever, then it just doesn't like that particular kind. Unless we could speak to dogs in the same language as them, it would be the only way we'd really be able to do some serious studies on why that is. But I know that happens. And also, a dog that doesn't like either, let's say, a male dog or a female dog. So you could have, let's say you have a male dog, and your male dog may be really great with other male dogs, but not great with female dogs. And so your dog would have a bigger tendency to potentially bite a female dog. Put in the right situation, the right dynamics, your dog could bite that particular dog. Now, an interesting thing that I have found, not only in all of my dog training that I've done, I've been dog training since 1990, and since I started Animal Education and Rescue in 2003, what I have found is that if you're going to have two dogs, it's always safest to have two male dogs. Obviously, all dogs should be spayed and neutered, so that's a given. But two neutered males are better than two spayed females, or one male, one female is also great. Female to female, two females living in a house, you're going to have more of a chance that they might not get along or might have higher anxiety or higher tension that could potentially lead into bites. So if you have a choice of picking, if you have a male and a male dog, pick another male or female. But if you have a female dog, maybe consider picking a male dog. Just food for thought. Also, a dog might bite another dog if the dog is smaller or bigger. They just don't like that particular size dog. You could have a dog that is fabulous. For instance, I went by a business associate's house last night, and she had a big pit bull. And she said, my pit bull does not get along with my Corgi Jack Russell Terrier mix. And she said, they are like oil and water. They don't get along at all. But yet, my big pit bull gets along great with the Chihuahuas. And I wouldn't trust the pit bull with my particular pit bull with strange dogs, but with my little Chihuahuas, he will let those Chihuahuas take food out of his mouth. And so look at that. Isn't that interesting? So again, the dog is picking and choosing who they like. And if you don't know that and you are unaware, there is a potential of a dog bite in that case. Let's see. Let me get some tissue here. I'm about to sneeze. Okay. Also, another reason a dog might bite is they might be resource guarding. And this is interesting. Resource guarding is kind of an interesting phenomenon. Sometimes resource guarding is not necessarily diagnosed, and someone just makes the assumption that the dog is aggressive when really it's just resource guarding a space. So you could have a dog that is fabulous, fantastic, strangers can come into the house, no problem, but that stranger goes into the baby's room and the dog bites the stranger or the new person. And just because that dog has decided they are going to guard the baby's room, as an example. You could also have a dog that is fabulous, fantastic dog, super friendly, super fantastic with people and other dogs, but with his food, he resource guards his food. And so you learn that there's a certain space around his food, maybe it's 2 inches up to, could be 5 feet, 6 feet, that you can't get anywhere near that dog when it's eating, because then it will try to bite you. You could also have a dog that resource guards a person, and that could be whoever's walking the dog down the street, and let's say another dog comes by and the dog that you're walking feels that it needs to protect you, so it's going to be lashing out like a lunatic, jumping and jumping and jumping at the end of that leash to try to get to that other dog to protect you. So it's resource guarding a person. So that can happen. And of course, resource guarding objects, and that could be toys. I have a foster mom. She's fantastic. She has 4 dogs, and 2 of her dogs are actually resource guarders of toys, dog toys. So they can eat together, they can have treats together, they don't resource guard anything else but their toys. So they cannot give the dogs any toys. You could have a dog that resource guards just Kong toys, something that specific, and everything else is fine. And really think about it. The only way that you would know any of that is if you ran into a problem and you saw, oh, you know what? This dog is snapping at the other dog whenever it walks by this tennis ball. But look, the dog is not snapping when it walks by its food bowl. So a lot of it is observing your dog and trying to catch the situation before it actually turns into an actual bite. But instead, you can kind of pay attention to the warning signs. And dog-to-dog bites can happen when a dog feels that it's protecting its owner, whether, as I said, on the leash, whether it's in the house, whether it's on the property, whether that dog perceives that its owner is being hurt or potentially hurt. It could be totally the dog's perception. So anytime that the dog feels it's protecting its owner. And leash aggression. Leash aggression is a huge thing. It happens. It's so common. So that would be a dog that when on leash and it sees other dogs, it is like a lunatic lunging and barking and trying to bite other dogs when it's on leash, and it makes a fool out of itself. And the theory behind that is that the dog feels stress and anxiety because it knows it can't get away from the other dog. While we perceive that as being aggressive behavior, that dog feels like it's protecting itself because it can't get away from the other dog. So that is one reason why you might have a dog that if it got close enough to another dog that was on leash, or let's say a dog was walking off leash, that it could potentially bite. Is leash aggression oftentimes is misperceived. So if you, let's say, find a stray dog, and that dog obviously is running the streets and it's not on leash, and you put that dog on leash and you try to introduce that dog to your dog, and the stray dog acts aggressive, then you might come to the conclusion, uh-oh, now this dog is not good. And you make this broad idea, understandably, that this dog is not good with any other dogs. But it's not a good test as to whether that dog is good with other dogs or not. You really have to get the dog in a safe space, off leash, to determine if the dog is good with other dogs. And again, it may not be all dogs. It may be a certain sex of dog, it could be the size of the dog, or the dog could decide it likes certain dogs and not other dogs. I hope that this is all making sense to you. Let's see if we've got any questions here. How would you recommend to approach chemical imbalances is a great question. And to be honest with you, a dog with chemical imbalances, here, let me go back to that section real quick. That is, in all honesty, from my opinion, and of course, I am going to tell you probably numerous times in this live and every other video that I do, is I encourage you to dig deep and research more. Don't listen to everything I say is golden. This is from my experience as a trainer in my circles of work and in my circles of life, is that a chemical imbalance is really the only ways to correct that, and I say this with a lot of hesitation, is medication combined with very strong rules and boundaries for the dog, and through lots of managing the situation. See, if a dog is unpredictably aggressive and biting, in other words, there's no way to, like for instance, we have resource guarding, and let's say we figure the dog is resource guarding its food, and we know that about the dog, but in every other way the dog is fine, then we can manage the situation by feeding the dog in the crate. But if the dog has, let's assume, and there's really only, you can only guess, an educated guess that it has a chemical imbalance, you have actually ruled out every other possibility that is causing this dog to bite, then you say, okay, it's a chemical imbalance, is based on the fact that it's unpredictable biting or snapping. And that would mean that randomly, for absolutely no reason whatsoever, the dog is biting. And really, to be able to determine that there isn't a reason, logical reasons why the dog is biting, then you really need to get a professional in there to evaluate the dog. So that's not something that an individual themselves, by themselves, wants to come to that conclusion. If you're at the point where you have a dog that is unpredictably biting and you're thinking it might be a chemical imbalance, then I would get a trainer in there or a behaviorist to really be able to analyze the dog and see if that's truly what it is. But my understanding and my experience is the only hope for truly a dog that has what I say is a screw loose is a combination of managing the situation, limiting the amount of people that are around that dog, making sure that dog gets enough exercise, potentially medication, although medication It's hit or miss whether it works, and oftentimes it has to build up in the system. It can take up to 30 days for the medication to start working. And then even then, if it doesn't work, if you don't notice a difference, and the differences could be subtle, then you have to try a different medication, and then it has to build up in the system for 30 days. So it is a project. So I hope that answers your question, Carolyn, as best as I can. Let's see. Rhonda says, our 11-and-a-half-year-old rescue German Shepherd is people and car friendly, but he is dog reactive with all dogs. We are working on it. That's great. That's great you're working on it, Rhonda. I would encourage you to work with a professional trainer that you trust their training style, you like them, they're a good communicator. One thing that is huge, and I know this from personal experience dealing with dogs that are reactive to other dogs, is you have a huge liability risk, and put all the safety precautions in place. Make sure that when you are walking the dog, you're not using a retractable leash. Make sure that the collar you're using is snug enough. Make sure that you have the ability to handle your dog should they be reactive to another dog. You know, just if you don't have dogs in your house, don't take unnecessary risks, and do everything really, really slowly, like baby steps, as far as introducing your dog to other dogs. And if you have to, use a muzzle during certain times to ensure everybody's safety. Because if your dog bites a dog, especially a dog you don't like, a neighbor's dog or a stranger's dog, they can cause you all sorts of grief, and then animal control can get involved, and then you could end up paying medical expenses for another dog, and then you have people that don't like you anymore, even though you're obviously didn't mean to have your dog bite their dog. So just be very, very careful, Rhonda, and make sure you go really slow and don't take any risks. I can tell you, whenever you're working with a dog that's reactive to other dogs, is that when you're working on correcting it, every time you're working on it, every time you put that dog in a situation where it's around other dogs, even with all sorts of safety measures in, you're taking a risk. So just go really, really slow, and I would suggest working with a trainer. Okay. Okay, so Rhonda said that the dog is people and cat friendly. And you know, that happens. Actually, there's a dog in our care, Rhonda, that his name is Roscoe. And Roscoe is actually cat friendly. He's great with cats. We found this out in the foster home he was in, but he's not typically good with other dogs. We have found that he's okay with some dogs, not okay with others, and somewhat unpredictable. So we've decided that the best thing for Roscoe is that he get adopted out as an only dog, because we don't know for sure which dogs he likes and which dogs he doesn't. Okay, any questions? Questions. Let's see how we're doing on time. It's 7:30, and we still have lots to talk about. So let's talk about dogs biting cats or small animals. And ironically, most dogs get along pretty well with cats. Let's just talk about cats, because more people have cats than, let's say, guinea pig. Guinea pigs are in cages, or rabbits. Let's talk about cats. So if a dog, first of all, to make sure that your dog doesn't bite your cat if they're new to each other, is to take it very, very slow and introduce them slow and in a very safe way. But dogs that bite cats, the reason they do is they have a high prey drive, and the cat runs. It could be that the cat is running away, and the instinct the dog has is to chase the cat and bite the cat. And actually, a dog could bite a human or another dog or a cat if they run away, because it's an instinct to chase. And of course, and also, like I said, and for the cat to run away, and for the dog to be able to catch up to the cat and actually bite it. So those would be the reasons why a dog would bite a cat. Dog bites a person. why does a dog bite a person? Well, from fear, we talked about that a little bit, and we talked about protectiveness, pain. So this is something I really want Everett to drive home, is those folks that say, my dog is so good with my kids can crawl all over my dog and my dog doesn't do anything. They could stick their hands in their mouth and pull their tongue out. Okay, never a good idea, everybody. First of all, we need to teach our children to respect our dogs, that's not fair to the dog that they should have to tolerate that. But there may come a day when that dog doesn't feel well, it has a tummy ache or it has arthritis or it's just not feeling well, and that child does something that it regularly always did, and it does it again, like for instance, climbing on the dog's back, and the dog turns around and bites the kid. And the parent is going, that's it, the dog's gone. It was great before, but now it's not good with children. Well, no, the dog was in pain. So there could be lots of reasons why for painful situations, we have to be really careful. Right across the street from my house, about 5 years ago, a dog got hit by a car. And it was not dead. And I pulled up, and a few of my volunteers got out. And the first thing I said to them is, this dog was hit by a car. Please, everybody, we got to put a blanket under the dog, and then each take a side of the blanket and lift the dog up and put it in the van. And don't try to pick the dog up and carry it, because there's a good chance you're going to get bit if that dog is in pain. Okay. And we talked about misdirected aggression, such as a dog being charged up by another dog. I'll give you another scenario. You have a dog, you're walking, and your dog is reactive to other dogs, and it's barking, 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 and it's lunging at the other dog and acting like an idiot and totally focused in on this other dog that it wants to bite, but it can't get at the dog because you've got a good handle on the leash. So what you do is you wrap your arms around your dog to try to calm your dog, and your dog reaches around with you hugging it and bites you. That's misdirected aggression. The dog had no intention of biting you, but it was so pumped up and so freaked out by the other dog that it turned around and it bit you. So that's not a time where you say to yourself, this is a vicious dog I own. No, the dog was angry at the other dog, and you should not have barrel hugged your dog in a moment when they had such heightened frustration. Okay, so let's see. Patty says, do you see aggressive behavior with dogs when the pack changes? Great question. I love it. Absolutely. You can see when you have a pack of dogs, anything more than 2 dogs, you're creating a pack. And as the dynamics change in the pack changes. And it's really important that you are observant at all times of how the dogs are interacting with each other when the pack changes. For example, if one dog dies and you adopt a new dog, and so now you have 4 dogs, but the dog that died was the alpha dog, as an example, then that puts a shift in the pack of 4 dogs, and somebody is going to want to be the leader. And so they're going to have to figure that out, and you need to make sure to monitor that, because ultimately you are the top dog, the top leader. And there will be, depending on the dogs and the nature of their personalities, there is going to be a pecking order. And so, yes, you could potentially have that. So whenever there is a change in the home with new dogs coming in, it is really important to be mindful to observe their behavior in the beginning, to limit their time together when you're not alone, like crate them when you're not there, or separate them in different rooms, and to really reinforce positive behavior by having them all sit and give them treats, and that's reinforcing that you're the boss. And it also is getting them to work together as a team, as a new collective. And so there's things you can do to make it better and ease the transition to a new pack. I hope that answers your question, Patty. Okay, so Patty says we had a dog pass away and the new oldest became aggressive. So the new oldest, I'm not sure if I know exactly what you mean by that. So the new oldest. So in other words, you had a dog pass away and then you got a new dog that happened to be the oldest in age, is what I'm guessing, became aggressive. So that's a loaded statement that I'm not quite sure I understand, that I would love to help you with, but I think that that would take up too much time. All I can say is I would highly recommend to you that if it's not working itself out, I would absolutely recommend that you have a trainer come out to your house, assess the situation, and give you tips. And just take things really slow. If one of the dogs is, because one died, the other one is kind of taking a leadership role, just make sure that you're observing, and when you need to step in there bodily, meaning walk between them and say, listen, buddy, I'm the boss, you're not the boss, I'm the leader of this house, do it. And really reinforce that it's not, the dogs can have their little pecking order, but the bottom line is they answer to the big cheese, and the big cheese is you. So that's a good way to hopefully curb some of the aggression. And when we use the word aggression, I think we as human beings have a tendency to use it very liberally. And so everybody's definition of what aggression is different. My definition of aggression is a dog that is not just dominant, but a dog that is actually snapping and biting and showing very dominant bullying behavior, and potentially has had some fights with other dogs or people and is menacing and really needs to have some training and have some guidance and so forth. So that's my definition of aggressive. So when you're talking to a trainer, anybody, Patty, anybody, make sure that rather than use broad sweeping terms like aggressive, which could mean anything from dogs that are just figuring out their pecking order, to a dog that is more dominant than the others, to really aggressive, meaning like biting and hurting people or dogs. So there's a wide range. So make sure that you are very clear and precise when you describe what is happening in your household. Okay. Patty says, we are learning to be the big cheese. Awesome. That is great. That is just fabulous. Okay. So let us move on. Okay. All right. So when does a dog bite a human? So this is interesting. A dog could like adults, but not children. I'm sure you've heard of that, but that is absolutely true. You could have a dog that likes adults, but is terrified or hates children. And that's really important to know before you get yourself involved with a dog that doesn't like children, if you're either planning on having children or you have children. Now, that said, there's ways that dogs and children can live in somewhat harmony if you have a dog that doesn't particularly like children, as an example. You could still live in harmony as long as things are monitored carefully. One of my first dogs I ever had as an adult, her name was Heidi. She was a German Shepherd mix, and she tolerated my kids growing up, but she certainly didn't really like them. She preferred adults. And when the kids would try to hug her, she would growl at them. Other people would have gotten rid of the dog because she was growling. What I did is it was an opportunity to educate my kids and to set limits. And no, it wasn't perfect, but I wasn't going to get rid of my dog. So my kids learned they don't pet Heidi. I mean, they don't hug Heidi. Heidi doesn't like to be hugged. And I just monitored closely, and I didn't leave them alone for extended periods of time when they were little. With Heidi in any way, shape, or form. And I tried to make sure I was there at all times when Heidi was there. It wasn't ideal, but I was committed to the dog. So you could have a dog that likes men but doesn't like women, or one that likes women but doesn't like men. And again, putting him in a situation of stress or feeling they have to protect their owner or whatever, if they don't like men, and then a man comes into the house and he's boisterous and big and approaches the dog, hi, puppy dog, then he's risking getting bit. So we're kind of layering this all on. Then you have a dog, let's say we find out, doesn't like hats, baseball hats, winter hats, whatever. What do we do when we find out, let's say a neighbor comes over and they're wearing a big old baseball cap, loud cap, or whatever it is, or a winter cap or whatever, and the dog is backing up and growling, and we know that that's what it is, then we tell the person with the hat to please take the hat off. And then if the dog's fine, then we know it was the hat, right? Sunglasses can cause a dog to freak out and be nervous as well. And again, put in a situation, the perfect storm could bite as well. And so those are all the things, all the ways and reasons why a dog could bite. Now, I'm going to stress a couple things with you that is essentially important in this whole dynamic. Is you could have a dog that is seriously dog aggressive. I think, who was it? Rhonda said that, not that her dog is seriously dog aggressive, but her dog is reactive to other dogs, okay? So somebody that doesn't understand dogs could get a new dog like that was being reactive to other dogs and could assume then that that dog was not good with people. And then they could wash their hands of the dog, return the dog to the shelter they got the dog from, and say, this dog is aggressive. But a dog that is dog aggressive or reactive does not mean that they're going to be reactive or aggressive with people. A dog that is good with cats might not be good with dogs. A dog that is good with dogs might not be good with cats. So it's not all across the board. We have had numerous times where we have dogs in our care. And I mean, I've been doing animal rescue since 2003, and I've been a dog trainer since 1990. So 1990, 91, whatever. Long time. So I cannot tell you how many times I have heard a person say, you know, call, or they get a dog from us or whatever, and they say, this dog bit another dog, and now I don't trust that dog with my children. I'm telling you, it does not necessarily cross all boundaries. You could have a dog that is not good with people, but good with dogs, or good with dogs, but not good with people. And so it's really important not to judge a dog completely by an act to one thing, whether it's to a dog or to a person. I hope this is making sense to you. So let's talk about some preventative things that we can do to really make sure that our dogs hopefully don't bite, and that we can prevent them being in any of these kind of situations that could cause them to bite. Because remember, I said in the beginning of this that any dog can bite. They have teeth, they can bite. So we want to do what we can to try to prevent them from biting, right? So first of all, know your dog. Know your dog. There was a point in time when the dog was new to you, whether you're watching this now and the dog you've had 5 years, you've had 10 years, or you just got the dog yesterday. It's really important to know your dog. Know what triggers your dog. Know if your dog doesn't like strangers coming into the house. Know if your dog gets protective of rawhide bones, but it's fine with Kong toys or tennis balls. Know this about your dog. Know if your dog is shy or skittish with strangers, and be your dog's advocate when people come over, and tell them very firmly, do not approach my dog, let my dog approach you. Be observant and make changes, or work with a trainer as needed. So be observant of what is going on with your dog and how it's going on, and say to yourself, I got to work on that, or I never noticed that before, that's got to change. So really, but don't overanalyze one situation either. So that's really important too, is that you look at a situation and you make note of something. Let's say the neighbor, Billy, the 10-year-old hyperactive, high-strung kid that doesn't listen to anything anyone says, comes over, and you could tell your dog is great with your kids and with all the other neighbors' kids, but the dog does not like Billy at all. And it's probably because Billy doesn't listen really well and he's hyperactive and whatever. So really the best option to ensure that Billy never gets bit because he makes the mistake of approaching the dog and the dog is fearful or scared of Billy or feeling defensive of Billy is to put the dog away when Billy comes over. It's so easy to do. You're not going to be able to change Billy. He's not your kid. And you can only set the rules to an extent in your home. So the best thing to do is keep Billy safe and keep your dog from getting a bad reputation or you potentially having a problem legally or having to pay medical bills. And certainly you don't want Billy bit. So put the dog away. So know your dog, really important. Take everything slow. Anytime your dog is in a new situation that they have never been in before, really observe your dog. Don't, for example, you get a brand new dog, you've had the dog less than a week, it's only been in your backyard, which is fenced in, and you've really gotten to know the dog's doing great and he's so happy and you love him and he seems so easygoing, and so you decide on day 5 that you're going to take the dog to the pet store at the busiest time of day when there's like 50 people there with 50 dogs and it's utter chaos. That would be not a smart move. So instead, take it slow. If you want it, you've had the dog a week, you want to take the dog to the pet store, you need to make sure the dog is going to be okay in that setting. Go on a day and a time when it's going to be slow. There's not going to be a lot of dogs, there's not going to be a lot of people, and where you can ease your dog into it, work on some training while you're there, train your dog, praise your dog for good behavior as your dog is learning the ropes of being in a pet store. And then once the dog graduates to that, 2 thumbs up, the dog did great. It went on a Sunday night at 8 o'clock right before the pet store closed. There wasn't a lot of people there. He seemed happy. It gave the dog a really good impression of pet stores. We're going to go back next time, and we're going to go at a time when it's a little more busy. So that would be taking things slow. When you have 2 dogs meet, don't leave them alone together. If you have a neighbor that, let's say you know your dog is great with other dogs and their dog is great with other dogs, you want your dogs to have a play date, fabulous, fantastic. Be there with them 100% of the time. Observe their behavior, because what if your dog or their dog decides they don't like them, or one of them has a trigger, like it guards sticks and the dogs are outside, and the neighbor's dog guards sticks, and then all of a sudden you've got a huge dog fight. So again, take things really slow and make sure that you monitor in all situations. Make sure that you establish yourself as the leader. Always make sure that you're the leader. Doesn't mean you have to be tough on your dog. Doesn't mean you have to scream at your dog or use a shock collar or pop and release on the collar. It doesn't mean that you have to be a bully or scare your dog. It just means that you have to establish yourself as a leader. And what that means is that you decide what the dog does and when it does it. So have your dog sit before you feed your dog. Have your dog sit for treats. Have your dog sit for walks. You walk out of the house, walk out first before you let the dog out. There's all sorts of ways that you can just gently and beautifully reinforce that you are the boss. For instance, you want your dog to sleep with you, then invite the dog on the bed. The dog could still sleep with you, but don't let the dog on the bed unless you're going to invite the dog. So those would be ways, and it doesn't mean you have to do all of those things, but if you have a more dominant dog, a more assertive or pushy dog, then you certainly want to really be even that much more like, up the ante on the different things you do to assure that you are the boss and that they're not. Body blocking or getting between two dogs is sometimes really helpful, making your body big and saying, hey, buddy, I'm the boss. You're not touching the dog. You're not hurting the dog. You're not hitting the dog. But sometimes that can be helpful as well. Also, exercise your dog. Make sure that age appropriate, you are exercising your dog enough. So if you have a 1-year-old lab mix That dog needs about 45 minutes to an hour of cardio exercise every day. You should be taking your dog for walks. You should be playing fetch in the backyard. You should be running around in the yard with the dog or inside the house, whatever you can do to give your dog exercise. That's really important. A tired dog is going to be a better behaved dog, regardless of the age. And obviously everything needs to be age appropriate. Also, properly and carefully socialize your dog. So socialize your dog with people and other dogs. Again, very slowly. Whenever we get a new dog in rescue, we are very observant and very slow when we introduce that dog to new people. For example, if we get a new dog into our care and the dog goes into our office first, we have a crate put in the office, the dog stays in a crate, and I have volunteers stop by to spend time with the dog. And I have them do it for short periods of time, and I don't let them walk the dog off the property, and I have them give the dog treats, and I have them observe the dog's behavior. So in that case, we are slowly socializing the dog. If you have a dog that, let's say, you're not sure is good with the new dog across the street. So again, when you have the dogs meet each other, do it in a very careful, slow way. Oftentimes I find that leash to leash meeting, having the dogs meet each other like this, nose to nose, sniffing each other on leash, sometimes isn't the best way for two dogs to meet. What might be a better option is to actually take the dogs for a walk together and have them walking the same direction, and maybe like sort of across the street, and then slowly walking closer until they're walking side by side, and then they can sniff each other's butts. That's a way to slowly socialize your dog. And again, you could have your dog for 5 years or 6 years or 10 years or whatever, and you could put your dog in a new situation. Let's say you've decided you're going to take the dog to grandpa's birthday party, and all the relatives are going to be there, and it's going to be at grandpa's house, and you need to take all that into consideration. You can't just, most dogs, you can't just let them be there without monitoring them and making sure that they feel safe. They don't feel nervous or anxious or protective, or they don't like Uncle Joe who has the big giant handlebar mustache. It's really important that you observe your dog and do things very slowly, so that way we can prevent any dog bites. These are a couple things I want to leave you with. And well, actually, before I do that, I want to see if anybody has any other questions. Any questions? Because we are almost done. It's almost 8 o'clock. I think I'm going to make good time. See if anyone has any questions. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with a couple things. First of all, not everything is fixable. If you have a dog that bites or that bit before, if you need to, get a trainer in there to analyze the dog and come up with a game plan to fix the problem. Like I said, any dog can bite. Put in the right scenario, it can bite. There's nobody that I know in my entire world, and I know quite a few people, that would purposely want their dog to bite somebody. If your dog bites another dog or a person, I am confident that they did that because of some reason. And so you need to just analyze that and figure out what you need to do to fix that so that it doesn't happen again. So if you have a dog, let's say, that is unpredictable with other dogs, that some dogs it does well with and some dogs it doesn't, then in order to fix that problem is going to be really difficult, because then you have to put your dog in a situation to be around a lot of different dogs. And each time you do that, you're taking the risk that your dog is going to bite another dog. So it's not perfect, but then you just don't take your dog to the pet store. If you take your dog for a walk, if you see another dog coming, you walk across the street and you make sure your dog is secure on leash. And that's what you're going to have to do. It's not perfect, but it may not be fixable. You may have a dog somebody may have a dog that is great with adults but not good with children, and really not good to the point where it's not safe for the kids. Well, then that dog needs to be rehomed into a home without children. It doesn't mean the dog is bad and that it's not going to be good with adults, but some things are not fixable. If you have a dog that resource guards, and it resource guards its food, you can spend hours and hours working with your dog on correcting the behavior, working with the dog trainer, and certainly, hey, more power to you, and that's great if you want to try to correct it. As you're working on correcting it, know a couple things. First of all, you need to do it very slowly so that you minimize the risk that you take of getting bit, but also know that it may or may not work, and it may not be foolproof. What is foolproof is that if your dog is food aggressive, feed the dog in a crate. Then when the dog has finished its food, let the dog out of the crate, lift the bowl, and put the bowl away. It's not fixable. The problem is not fixable, but it's manageable. The other thing, too, I'll leave you with is that there are a million variables on why a dog bites, like what set that dog up to actually bite. And that you cannot take one situation and think it's all. For example, the reputation that pit bulls have for biting. And you could have a pit bull that is not great with other dogs and it bites another dog. And the assumption that a lot of people that don't understand pit bulls or that have a preconceived notion of pit bulls due to the bad media that is inaccurate is then they would make the assumption that the dog is not good with people and that it's vicious in general. And that's, again, not the case. And ironically, you could have, let's say, that same pit bull that is, let's say, bit another dog while it was on leash, while it was on a walk, that could live in perfect harmony, playing wonderfully and being fantastic with the dogs that it lives with in its household. But for whatever reason, it decided that it was going to protect the person that was walking it, and it didn't like any other dogs that passed by it. Okay, again, that may or may not be fixable. If it's not fixable, then that dog needs to be muzzled when it's off the property, or it needs to be a yard dog, and it can't go off the property if it's acting that way with other dogs. So there are a million variables and a million different scenarios. I highly recommend to you, if you are having a dog that is snapping or biting, first of all, don't just give up on your dog. The first thing that you should do is contact a reputable trainer or behaviorist to at least get an analogy or a evaluation of your dog and to determine what could have caused your dog to bite. Because as I said in the very beginning of this, and I will say one more time, that any dog can bite. It is possible, and it is up to us as their owners, their leaders, and their family to do what we have to do to protect them and to ensure that they aren't going to make that kind of mistake again or at all. And the way we do that is by being observant, by getting to know our animal, by taking things slow, fixing what we can, and managing what we have to manage. And in the worst case scenario, if the dog is not a good fit and you've consulted with the trainer, then to find a good home for your dog that would be better suited for your dog. So we have about 4 minutes left, and I can answer any questions anyone has. Otherwise, I'm going to call it a night, and I hope that you have learned a few things tonight, something new, and that I was able to help you in some way. And I would encourage you to share this information, to pass this video on to anybody that you know that has dogs, because the more we can educate the public, the better it is for dogs and for people. It helps us be safe, both animals and people, to be safe and living in happy harmony together. And if you'd like to make a donation in honor of this educational video, you can do that on our website. You can go to the Facebook page and you can click the button that says Donate Now, or you can go to aear.org. And we are always proud to be able to offer these educational videos to help people to be better pet owners. Okay, thanks everyone. It's Sandy Kamen-Wisniewski, and I am signing off. Have a great night. Bye.